athletes, we're talking about how just changing one thing can make a huge difference, and then you don't have to rack your brain and pull your hair out just trying to figure out, how do I make my workouts better, or how do I make my workouts affect me again? So just like your nutrition, we don't want to change a million things because first of all, we don't know what's actually going to help us change. If we're changing so many things, we can't even track it. And you change too many things, it's really easy to plateau because again, we always want to be thinking, we want to constantly become more efficient with our exercises so we can become skillfully better. That way, that too helps us lift more weight. All right, so it's going to sound complicated. It probably looks complicated looking at the board, but guess what? It's really not that bad, and I'll explain it to you. So let's say you're doing 2 leg days a week, because remember, by splitting up your work, you can do more essentially, right? Because you get a little bit of time off in between. So you could make your workout on Monday and on Thursday or Friday, depending upon what 2 days you're doing your legs. You could do it the exact same exercises in the same order with the same amount of time in between, okay? But we need to change just one thing between those 2 days, okay? And then as the weeks come on, we can change one thing on each day. So here's what I mean by that. Let's decide you're doing back squats, right? You're doing back squats on Monday and back squats on Thursday, Friday, whatever your second leg day is. Great. We need to figure out a rep scheme. Now, again, we're trying to either gain weight or lose weight, so we need to do a few repetitions. 3s might not do it for you unless you really have your diet nailed down, but again, grow or lose weight, we can do the same. I like 8s, I like 10s, I like even up to 15 repetitions, okay? So let's just say 8s. Okay? Now, what we got to keep remembering is each week we can change something simple like how many sets of 8 you do. Maybe you start with 3 sets on the first week. Week 2, you do 4 sets, 5 sets, 6 sets. But again, we never want to go over 20 sets, right? Our maximum amount of sets per week is 20. So maybe we decide, hey, I'm going to do 4 sets of 8. Great. Let's just pick an arbitrary weight. Let's say 100 pounds. Okay, so we've already got 4 sets planned out. Now, let's say on Thursday, Friday, whatever, you want to do back squats, okay? Now, we could change how many reps you're doing, right? Maybe you do sets of 10. Cool. Now, because you're doing sets of 10, most likely you're not going to be using the same amount of weight. So let's just pick a weight. Let's just say you happen to be able to do 90 pounds. Okay, so for that week, we've already done 8 sets of work. Now, what could we do the next week? All right, next week we could do a 5th set of 8. Cool, okay? 5 sets of 8, and then keep it 4 sets of 10. Because again, by adding 1 set, we already have changed so much for your body to deal with, okay? You're already adding 8 repetitions at 100 pounds. That's 800 more pounds of work, okay? That's a huge jump, okay? Now, another thing you could do is maybe you bump the weight. And this is what I prefer to do, rather than constantly trying to deal with how many sets of work am I doing. Because again, you can do, let's say, 20 sets of legs, but if you're trying to do 20 sets of legs, 20 sets of chest, 20 sets of back, and metabolic conditioning, all this stuff, that is so much for your body to deal with. You're just going to get sick, and you're going to get into a rut real fast, okay? And your strength is just going to diminish. So I like to deal with weight. Maybe for 4 to 6 weeks, I'll add 5 pounds a week. So maybe week 1, I'll do 100, then 105, then 110, 115, 120, 125. Maybe that's how I approach it. And then maybe over here as well, maybe I bump the weight a little bit as well. Because again, we always want to think progressive overload. So in some way, shape, or form, I need to be doing more work, whether it's this month, this year, this training phase, this week, whatever. I need to make sure I'm doing a little bit more work. And it doesn't have to be I have to go from a 100-pound squat this week to a 700-pound squat next week. No, 5 pounds can make a big difference. Because again, when we're talking 32 repetitions, right, 4 sets of 8, 5 extra pounds, we're talking over 100 pounds you just added to your weekly volume. And then if you come over here too, 40 more reps, you added 5 more pounds, again, another 200 pounds. That's plenty of volume. And then again, I like to do a couple exercises, 2, okay? Maybe 3 if I'm really trying to do something crazy. But again, the more exercises we do, the less we're going to be able to work at that one exercise. So would you rather do 20 exercises, 1 set of each, or would you rather do 3 or 4 exercises in a week and do 4 or 5 sets each, right? Then you can really get skillful at it. That way, when I ask you to add another 5 pounds from last week, you not only can because you're stronger, but skillfully you can deal with it, right? Rather than, it's been 6 months since I've squatted, but you know what, I'm just gonna start heavier. That's not what we're looking to do, okay? So, we've got 4 sets, there's 8. Again, I like to start maybe 12, especially if you're trying to kind of change your whole body all at once. 12 sets of everything can be pretty good, because again, if you have 2 leg days, if you have an upper body, push-pull day twice a week, and then let's say you do some general conditioning, you could be doing 50 sets of work already. That's quite a bit, okay? So again, we need to be focused on not only just today, because we don't want to burn ourselves out for all of our other days and weeks to come. So again, I might add in a second exercise. So we're up to 8. So I might put 2 or 3 sets over here. So let's just say I do 3 sets of 10 at whatever weight. And then next week with on Thursday, maybe I do the exact same thing. Maybe I do 3 sets of 10, but instead I do a single leg exercise, right? I can use the same piece of equipment, same rep schemes, but now I'm just working one leg at a time. What's that going to do? Certainly I'm going to use less weight, but it's going to put different pressures in different places. Now I know, Josh, you told us you want to start with single leg exercises first, but remember I said sometimes the heavier exercises you might want to do first. And in this case, that's what we're wanting to do. We're trying to get better at this, okay? Now, let's say, hey Josh, I don't really want to back squat twice a week. Maybe it makes me feel weird or whatever. You could easily change this exercise out to a front squat, and then you wouldn't have to make this a single leg exercise at all. You could do almost exactly the same thing because you already changed it to a front squat, okay? So once you've done those exercises, now it's week 2. Again, let's say we're adding just 5 pounds a week. Again, it's really simple to do. Now, what do you do if all of a sudden you added a little too much weight and now you can't do as many repetitions? Well, you've got 2 options. One, is it you didn't eat enough? Okay, maybe your activity level surpassed how much energy you're taking in. There's something to consider. Or is it B, maybe it's too heavy? Maybe you're not the type that can go 6 weeks before you have to take a week off. Whatever, you gotta think about it and play with it, okay? We're not just thinking 1 6-week phase here. We're thinking for the next 16, 30 years, okay? So again, one oops isn't gonna make a huge difference, but it is something to try to consider and figure out what is your problem. So, let's say again, you've gone your full 6 weeks, you had no problems. Now what do I do, Josh? You have a few options. Option 1 is you could change the rep scheme. Maybe you come in and say, hey, now I'm gonna start doing sets of 10 squats on Monday, and then I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna do front squats on Thursday. I'll do sets of 10 because I just like sets of 10. Cool. By just changing that, certainly your weight's going to come down. But again, you might start at whatever weight and build up into it. Or, Josh, I loved the sets of 8. Okay? I loved the sets of 8. But this time, instead of starting at 100 pounds, I'm going to see if I can start at 105. And then I'm going to go 6 weeks and see if in that 6th week I can go to 130. Cool. Maybe you do that again and again and again. Maybe you can do that for 3 full training phases, whatever. Now, eventually, you're going to have to change maybe the exercise. Maybe you just kind of burn it out. But we don't actually have to say no more back squat. It's really easy to change your intensity, and check out our intensity video on how to do that, okay? Because there are so many things we can do without having to change the exercise, okay? Now, after you've gone 6 weeks, I like to call it a deload week. Now, here's what we're trying to do. We need to, first of all, let our bodies recover. Giving ourselves that extra week can help us gain more muscle and lose more body fat because our body just has a chance to catch up. So, in a deload week, at the most, we're maybe 8 sets of total work. So again, when we're trying to really change our body, 20 is the number. Maybe we go all the way up to 8 sets. But we want to have the amount of volume we're doing. So, for example, let's say your last week, you went 4 sets of 8 at 130. Okay, here's a quick way you do it. You could do 4 sets of 4. Okay, 4 sets of 4. You just have your volume because you're only doing 4 repetitions at a time instead of 8. Okay, that's how I prefer to drop my volume, is do the same amount of sets, because then I get to practice things like how do I mount the bar, how do I step back with it, how do I take my breaths, things like that. Really good, skillful things. But now instead of doing it at 130, we want to drop our intensity just a little bit, okay? We still want it to be kind of heavy. The weight isn't what makes us very fatigued. It's the amount of work, the amount of repetitions we do that makes us tired. So in our deload weeks, maybe instead of doing 130, maybe I I'm only doing 115 pounds, 4 sets of 4, okay? In your deload week, if you really need one, which again, after 6 weeks, take one even if you don't think you need one, it's gonna be hard just to even do this much weight. Why? Your body's broken down, okay? Even sets of 4 can be tough. Now, again, on your deload, even your exercises that follow, leg press, hack squat, whatever, you wanna have the volume. So instead of 10 here, maybe you do only 5, okay? We gotta make sure we're taking enough breaks because otherwise our body just doesn't have a chance to catch up. Now, let's talk general conditioning. So you've done your warm-up, you did your preps, you did your 2 to 3, maybe 4 exercises, but again, if we're talking only 20 sets a week, that's a lot. Then we can go into general conditioning. Now, this type of stuff, we just wanted, especially if we're trying to lose weight, to help us lose weight, not to break our muscles down much further, okay? So exercises I like are something we call concentric only. So sleds, I love sleds. I love running a sled down because that's not damaging my leg as much as maybe a squat or a lunge would, okay? Now, if I am doing lunges, I'm doing them unloaded. I'm just doing a set number of repetitions. I'm not trying to burn myself out. Maybe I do a walk uphill on a treadmill. Maybe I do stairs. Again, I want it where I don't have to try to decelerate my body. I want it so that it's just working those muscles, not damaging my joints, especially on my deload weeks. Now, Josh, I want to make it so I can't walk. Okay. So, you really want to train your legs. That's totally fine. But we have to think, if I just go crazy on my legs, I can't expect my upper body to be ready to do a good workout. So if Monday I completely kill myself, don't expect Tuesday or Wednesday to be that great. So maybe on your Tuesday, Wednesday workouts, you just kind of sit just above a deload and just below where you kind of want to start. Maybe you only do 8 sets of chest, 8 sets of back, whatever, kind of as a maintenance thing so that you can just keep hammering out your legs. And here's what I recommend if that's what you want to do. So maybe on Monday you think squats or lower body push, right? In our lower body push, we're thinking the fronts of our legs. So maybe you squat, maybe you hack squat, and maybe you do leg presses, and you do 4 sets of each of those exercises. You do 16 total quad sets. Okay, great. So let's make that look pretty. So again, since you're trying to do a bunch of repetitions, you might start with a little bit more weight by doing 4 sets of 8 squats. Then maybe you go into sets of 10 or 12 on your leg press to really get some things firing. Then maybe you're like, yeah, I really want my quads to go crazy. So I'm going to do 4 sets of 15 leg extensions right at the end, okay? Now again, we want to think progressive. So maybe here again, you did your 100, now you do your 105, your 110, 115, whatever. You add the weight here, and maybe here for next week, maybe you think, okay, I want to do 10 week 1, 10 repetitions. Then I want to do 11 repetitions in week 2, and then 12. So your weights are going to vary, and that's fine. Maybe you do 13 in the next week, 14 in the next week, or you try to maintain the same weight and still up the reps every time. And then maybe in your leg extensions, you play with different tempos to make it harder. Maybe the first week you just do it at whatever tempo, then the next week you go a little slower, maybe a little faster, maybe you pause at the top, whatever, okay? So that's your quad day. Now, maybe your Thursday you're thinking, now I want my hamstrings. Okay, so I really focused on my lower body push. Now it's time to focus on lower body pull. So my favorite one to do is a deadlift. Okay, now I would say a traditional deadlift over a sumo deadlift, just because again, we really want to affect those hamstrings. You might even go as far as saying, I'm just going to do an RDL, right? And we've seen videos on this where we're just tipping over and getting our hamstrings and glutes into it. But again, now we want to think, okay, we want to start a little heavy. Maybe I'll do 5 sets of 6 here, right? Because I want to go really freaking heavy, okay? Great. Do 5 sets of 6, wonderful. Then after that, maybe you're thinking leg curls, okay? Again, just for those hamstrings. And maybe here you're like, man, I think if I do 6 sets of 10, holy cow, the backs of my legs are going to be on fire. Then maybe you do some type of like a hip thrust for your butt, 11. So let's say we do another 5 sets of 12 hip thrusts where we're just going crazy on it, okay? But again, we still need to think, how do I change my weight? Now, this type of a thing, we've got 16 sets of quads per week, That's if you're not even adjusting your sets, which you could, right? Week 1, you go 16, then 17, 18, 19, 20 into week 5. Take a deload. And then on Thursday, we're hitting the backs of our legs. We have 16 sets here. And again, maybe in week 2, it's 6 sets of 6. Maybe in week 3, it's 6 sets of 12, 6 sets of 6, and 6 sets of 10. Whatever. Maybe you're just adjusting your weights, okay? One thing. Pick it, stick with it for 5 to 6 weeks. Then make sure you take a deload where you have the reps and lower the intensity just slightly. But again, if you're expecting your body to hammer out 32 sets of legs in a week, you can't expect your upper body to be able to do a ton either. So again, make sure you're maybe 8 to 10 sets of pushing, 8 to 10 sets of pulling, just so you can maintain it. So keep this in mind when we're talking leg days.